Good afternoon, good morning, or night, wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to another episode of Tech Stew, the show that discusses the best of everything tech, computers, home theater, gaming, science, and more. And I am Mark Murin, and this is the holiday edition of Tech Stew, which we're going to cover lots of good stuff here in a few minutes. In the meantime, some topics that have been floating around on the in the tech realm about Windows 8 sales. Analysts have been trolling recently, writing headlines with really no facts behind them, flowing around Surface RT sales being on the low end of things, but there's no real proof to some of the statistics saying that sales have been down and so forth. We have to wait for actual stats on that. We have Surface Pro coming in January of 2013. Maybe this is maybe Microsoft waited to push RT on everyone first, since it's what they're hoping for in the Metro realm. But that, in my mind, was kind of a mistake, waiting until January 2013 for the actual Pro, Surface Pro, which is looking pretty good on the Surface Pro. You have Clover Trail coming, which offers better performance and battery life on some of this new hardware as well. The actual article that I'm referencing here, or the story that I'm referencing, was the DigiTimes reported that Microsoft had actually cut orders. Microsoft had cut orders for the rest of 2012 for the Surface RT tablet in half, from 4 million to 2 million units, and that the price of the Surface Pro might actually come down too and possibly be released before January, although now that's rather unlikely. Prices for the Surface Pro are supposed to start at $899 for a 64 gig version and $999 for the 128 gig model. And Microsoft, of course, denied this report, so nothing official yet from Microsoft and Steve Ballmer and company in Surface land. So a lot of people this year, with Christmas here, will ask the question, should I go to Windows 8 or stick with 7? Well, honestly, that probably depends on the type of user you are. If you're the type who likes new tech, learn new things, then yeah, Windows 8 might be for you. If you're happy with Windows 7 and you're not buying a new machine, there's really no immediate need to upgrade to Windows 8. Although I've got to say, I've been using Windows 8 now for 2 or 3 months since the beta first started, and at first it's a little daunting because of the new start screen interface, but it grows on you over time. Although frankly, I spend very little time in the modern UI interface, the start screen. That doesn't really matter to me. I'm in the desktop mode anyway. But I'm on the tech end and the adventurous end, so overall it's a good operating system. But now we have Microsoft has announced that they're going to be releasing new versions of Windows more regularly. In particular, we have Codename Blue coming out next year, which is really just Windows 8.5, which will have a feature upgrade, service pack, maybe some UI changes. Will we see the start button come back? I'm thinking probably not in the desktop mode. But more regular updates like Windows 9 will probably come less than 3 or 4 years in the future. That is certain. So we are going to discuss, first of all, before we get into the holiday guide, I wanted to chat a bit about Microsoft Office 2013. I've had some time to work with 2013, and I have run into some things that are kind of alarming, at least for some users anyway. And we're going to dig into that. Start off with an email from Office 2013. The basic gist here is that Office 2013 is a sea of white, and it's way too bright. And this article will appear on the TechStew website very soon. I already have it. If you have used Office 2013 for any length of time now, you think you probably have found that the screen, the color scheme to be way too white. Of course, flat is the new UI kind of thing that Microsoft has going on. And the contrast, hard to see different areas of the screen. They're not well defined. And you would think getting Office 2013 means you're getting something that's better, faster, has enhanced features. Now it does in general. Now what we're discussing here isn't a review of the product, but more of the graphical user interface and what you can expect visually from Office 2013 and some of the subproducts like Outlook and Link 2013. So this is kind of a business application. We use it in our business, and this has been the case so far and out in the general public as well. It's floating around in a lot of forums, same kind of stories that we have discovered. Some people have said such things as the contrast and brightness in Outlook, for instance, has caused their eyes to bleed. That's a bit extreme, but if you use Outlook in 2013, you'll see what we're talking about here. You can't really change the color scheme, and there are a couple of options to switch to, but in general you can't switch. You're stuck with what you see for the most part. Outlook feels like a sea of text and buttons with no clear distinction between the sections. The contrast from one area to another is poor. Then you have that white background, and to me it's pretty appalling. Taking a look here at Outlook 2013, you can see I've highlighted the blue. That's the content area pretty much. Same at the bottom, that's your preview. That's where the preview actually begins. Now we're into the discussion of the waste of space with Office 2013. As you can see, there's a huge gap between the emails at the top and the preview area at the bottom. And then at the bottom, they give you the picture preview of the person you're sending the email to, or the organization, and all the jargon that goes around at the subject and the email address, and they fill it into a giant block of text so that pretty much by the time you get to your message you have very little to preview in the preview, which seems pretty silly because you would expect to have more space. And it's worse than it was in 2010. And at the top the ribbon just sucks up a ton of space, as you know, but that can be dealt with, as I'll show you in a second here. But if we look then at a closer example here, you can see the gaps here in this preview message. Office 2013 defaults to the view that shows you the one or two line preview as well, which, going back to this email here, there's a 1 or 2 line preview. Now you can turn that off. That's the fortunate part. This part is fixable. If you go into your options, if you go into your message preview, under view message preview, you can change it from 1 line to off, and then you won't have double lines for every entry in your emails. That huge space, there's really not a whole lot you can do about that, the waste of space in general. Of course you could just turn off the preview pane, but most people aren't going to turn off the preview pane if they already like the preview pane. Of course you can double click and open emails, but that's less desirable. But one thing you can do, like I mentioned previously, is the giant toolbar at the top. You can hit the up arrow and make that go away. And if there's a area at the top left after you've minimized the toolbar. Anyways, if you minimize the toolbar at the top left in this image here, you can see the icons like delete and the undo and so forth. You can find those, you can customize those and add them by right-clicking any of the buttons in the actual menu and say add to quick access toolbar. That way your ribbon area is gone, but yet you have some of the commonly used icons. Like the one I have up there is the delete button that wasn't there by default. I added that manually. Now you can go into the options and set a background, and set it rather to no background and dark gray, I should say. And when you do that, you end up with something that looks a little bit like this instead of something that looks like this, which that isn't much different. So as you can see, there's not a huge disparity there. And here is the ribbon gone. That's the actual ribbon when it's been minimized and put out of the way until you need it. And I did have the image right there. So the other area that people will run into is Link 2013. And Link, by default, has these giant images at the top that are the Link images. They're very social centric in both Outlook and Office, as you can tell. And there's no way to turn these pictures off in Link or in Outlook, at least as of right now. You can hit the button at the bottom right. There's a participants button, and if you click that, the images go away, and then you have to scroll up and down to see who's in your meeting. And the whole point here is that this view, you can't tell unless you know the person's image offhand who's in the actual conversation group until you hit that participants button. Once you do that, then you have to make the window bigger or scroll to find out who you are talking to. It's kind of annoying. And then the space it sucks up just in general with the people you're chatting with, the other tab windows. You can turn off tabbing so it doesn't show up all in one window. These are different conversations, and the top left one is the group conversation and another chat right there. That sucks up a lot of space too, as you can tell. So there's been some other issues with Office 2013. Not really issues, but when you're typing in Outlook or in Link, the cursor will basically lag behind. It feels like you're in the early 90s typing on a computer, and that is pretty noticeable in Excel more so than Outlook. And it also has transition animations turned on for Office in general, and you can turn those off. I found that switching mailboxes at times can take 3 to 5 seconds to show the folder, and sometimes it doesn't. It's instant, and other times it's 3 to 5 seconds. It just depends. Another annoyance has been the toast, as they call it, the preview when you get a new email. Sometimes they don't show up right when your email comes in. It happens about 2 minutes later. Or you can't delete the email from the preview window like you used to in Outlook 2010. So those are the major grievances here that I've had. Of course, you get a lot of enhancements like SkyDrive integration, better Excel functions, syncing across devices, and so forth, but at the cost of a graphic UI design that is a bit kludgy. Of course, the major reason here why it's probably been designed the way it is in this social-centric fashion and with lots of space, you would think, is maybe because of a touch-based interface that Microsoft has been pushing on cross-platform, going across all platforms. But in reality, if you turn on the toggle button for going to touch mode, you actually end up with a ton more space once you toggle on touch mode. So it may or may not be the issue. And it would be nice if it would dynamically shrink it down even further, but it doesn't as of right now with the way things are. Hopefully the white and the contrast issues will be resolved with a ability to add themes as in the past. But as of right now, there are no themes. You're limited to what you got, and tweak it as best you can, change some settings, and that is that. And that is all I've got on the Office issue, but felt that was worthy of a discussion. And moving on to the holiday guide, we get into some good stuff here. We will jump right in with the first thing in the holiday guide under the gaming side of things. You can get an Xbox 360 4GB Connect bundle for $200 on Amazon, or not Amazon, on Microsoft rather, with free shipping, and they're offering that as the holiday bundle. That's the lowest total price out there pretty much for this bundle, and it features the wireless controller, the 4GB hard drive, Connect sensor, Connect Adventures, Connect Disneyland Adventures, and a 1-month Xbox Live Gold membership. And a pretty good deal. Well, 4 gig won't get you very far, but if you're just starting out with a new system, it will do the trick. Halo 4, $39.99 shipped. GameSpot review has given it 9.0 out of 10 and an 8.8 by users overall. Master Chief returning to battle an ancient evil bent on vengeance and annihilation. Humanity and the universe will never be the same again. This is the Reclaimer saga, the beginning of it. It experienced the dawn of an epic new Halo adventure. You can do solo or split screen with up to 3 friends. And, of course, playing multiplayer even more than that online with vehicles, armor abilities, a new loadout, Spartan 4 player progression system. And pretty awesome game overall. Of course, online multiplayer and the Spartan Ops missions require an Xbox Live Gold membership sold separately. Now, related to gaming, if you're a heavy PC user and a gamer, you're probably familiar with the Hoppage HD PVR. Well, this is the PVR2, the gaming edition. You can find it online for $149. This allows you to capture your console output and send it to the PC through HDMI pass-through, basically. It supports 1080p 60, records at 1080p 30, and all formats down from there. Has a button on the right of the device to start and stop the recording, and as I've mentioned, it uses the HDMI pass-through for playing and recording. Now, the USB is what is used to send the data to the PC or laptop. H.264 AVC HD encoding, and it ranges in 1 to 13.5 megabits per second, and the formats are .ts and .m2ts and MP4. I've had the original PVR and it was pretty awesome, so it's a good deal there at $149. Now we jump into the tablets and e-reader category. First one up here is the Apple iPad. Of course, this is the 4th gen iPad, and you can find it for $4.99, featuring a 9.7-inch screen, iOS 6 A6X processor, LTE cellular, same size and weight as the previous iPads. Does not have an SD slot, of course. My Apple products typically do not, but it's worth mentioning. You're not going to be able to expand that. The Google Nexus 7 is $199, 16 gig Wi-Fi only model, 12 ounces, and no SD slot in the Nexus 7. And it is a 7-inch screen, naturally. Has a quad-core CPU. It allows for 10 hours of web browsing and e-reading and 300 hours of standby. Next up, we have the iPad Mini, and that is $329 for the 16 gig version, Wi-Fi only. The 16 gig Wi-Fi and cellular option is $459. It features a 7.9-inch display and has 10 hours of battery life, and of course, no SD slot. And by comparison here, we have the Nook HD. You can compare this to a Kindle, which I don't actually have on this list. The Kindle Fire does not have an SD slot. This Nook HD does. It is a $199 device, 7-inch. You can find it on Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. You can get the 8 gig version for $167 actually on Amazon. And that is... it's a little more money, I think, on Barnes & Noble. It has a 1440 by 900 resolution, 720p, weighs about 11.1 ounces, and features 10.5 hours reading, 9 hours of video. Has a port for HDMI and the micro SD slot and the Android OS. Yeah, the micro SD slot can really make a difference because you can get a pretty cheap 32 gig SD card to put in these and expand your horizons on space, as opposed to the Apple products where you're pretty landlocked. You're stuck with the size until you upgrade. Those are some of the advantages of a Nook HD or a the next one, the Nabi 2. Now the Nabi 2 is geared towards kids. If you have kids, this is great, and if you're a parent, this is great because you can use the adult mode in this. The adult mode, it sounds risque, but the kid-friendly interface is the approved apps, as we've mentioned before on previous podcasts, and you can check out the full video on the Nabi 2, and we also have the guide on Text2 for rooting the Nabi 2 so that you can put the Google Play Store on here and actually install apps from Google Play. It has a 1024 by 600 resolution, so not quite 720p. 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of internal memory, and a 2 megapixel camera with 720p recording, and camera recording was so-so in our tests. It had a pretty average battery life, and it weighed about 21 ounces. It's heavier, but it has that rubber protection, which is definitely worth it if you're using it with kids, and you would be using it with kids because that's why you would probably buy a Nabi 2. I personally would buy a Nabi 2 before I would buy an iPad mini, just simply because it's less money by at least $100, and the interface for kids can be approved with which apps you want them to see, and you can get into your mode and have the full ice cream sandwich, and you have the micro SD slot. Granted, the resolution is slightly less than 720p, but in my usage it's really not that big of a deal. It looks really crisp and really great, especially compared to an iPhone 4 in my case. And that is the Nabi 2, not to be confused with the Nabi, as there was an original Nabi a year or two ago. Alright, we move on to some Windows 8 tablets. Now, this isn't the same as the Surface tablet, but it's Windows 8 nonetheless and has all the touch features as the Surface will. The Microsoft Surface is Microsoft branded their own hardware, which is a good thing. It's good that a company has a baseline model, and finally, you'd think after all these years Microsoft has had them, but they haven't. And we're not trying to confuse here. I'm just trying to clarify that the Acer Iconia is made by Acer, and it has Windows 8 on it. This model here that you see is the W510-1422. It is a 10.1 inch 64 gig Windows 8 tablet with keyboard dock. It will run you $759.99. Of course, keep in mind that the 64 gig is not 64 gig. There will be a bit less space available, as we mentioned in a previous podcast, at least with the Surface Pro, or the RT rather. They were announcing 32 gig, I think it was, or yeah, I think it was 32. Actually, it had about 16 gig of usable space, or 14 gig, I forget exactly. But this Acer Iconia has a 1366 by 768 resolution. It has 5-point multi-touch screen supporting finger touch and image auto rotation. Windows 8 has an Atom dual-core processor, Z2760, 1.5 gigahertz, 2048 of memory, 2 gig, and integrated Intel graphics media accelerator with 64 of dedicated memory and 64 gig on storage. It has the Acer InVLink Amplify 802.11a BGN Wi-Fi, microphone, stereo speakers, got your USB ports, one of them, one micro HDMI, micro SD slot. It'll take a 32 gig card, rear-facing HD 8 megapixel and 2 megapixel front-facing. Has your gyroscopes, your accelerometers, your standard issues, features like that, and a keyboard dock. So it's pretty thin and light. It runs forever. It's more of a workhorse. It's lighter than the current iPad. Although it's not quite as powerful as the current iPad, it's pretty practical if you're a Windows person especially. And you can check that one out. That is one option this Christmas season. Now jumping into some consumer end audio receivers, at least one of them that I can recommend personally because I have it, is this guy right here. That is the Denon 1912. Now the Denon 1912 will run you about $400 on Amazon. It's a 7.1 channel network streaming AV receiver. HDMI 1.4A, 6 in and 1 out, and it's 3D ready. Auto calibration microphone system. It has it's AirPlay ready. And the network ability, it has a network port for Pandora, Rhapsody, Flickr, and it's iPod ready. 875 watts of total power, and it's rated at 90 watts on each channel at 8 ohms, or 125 watts at 6 ohms, and carries the standard 2-year warranty. Here's a look at the back end of the device. The 2-year warranty can be extended, and my word of advice is do not buy the in-store warranties. They are overpriced and unnecessary as a general rule. You can buy a Mac warranty for pennies. About $16 gets you 3 extra years when this one runs out, and that is about 5 years overall. The 6 HDMI ports are awesome. It does work well. The 3D works great. I use it with my my Samsung 61 LED. I still have a rear projection. Works great with that. Switching. If you throw any Harmony Universal programmable remote, you're all set. Those remotes plug into your computer, and you can program them over the internet, and they are great, and I have several of them. And that is that guy. Now another one, I don't have a picture for this one, that we could recommend might be the Marantz NR1403 Slimline AV receiver. If you're hurting for space, it's slimmer, not as tall. Low profile chassis, about 4.5 inches in height. That's pretty smaller. Most receivers don't come that small. Has Bluetooth wireless connectivity via the RX101 adapter. 6 HDMIs, just like the other one, the Denon. Front panel HDMI, and it's only 50 watts at 8 ohms, like compared to the 90 on the other one. So if you don't have a large room, this would probably do you well, and especially if you're short on space. And it's smaller and slimmer. Now for Yamaha fans, and I used to have a Yamaha, and they're great little receivers. You can take a look at the RX-V673, RX-V673, pictured here. 7.2 channel network receiver, and it allows streaming with AirPlay from the iPod, iPhone, iPad. Has all the HD audio recording formats, just like the Denon and the last one. All these receivers typically feature your Blu-ray audio formats: DTS HD, Master Audio, and Dolby Digital HD, True HD. Now, what makes this Yamaha different than the other ones is it has 4K upscaling. So it is ready for next generation super high resolution displays, and features 4 HDMIs and 1 out. So a little skimpier on the HDMIs, but with some advanced features. And it supports 3D. It has an AV controller app for its various options. You can do it from an iPod, an iPhone, or Android phones. Features YPAO RSC reflected sound control optimization for automatic speaker setup, multi-zone support, auto calibration, and that's part of the YPAO. 90 watts per channel. So that's a $550 one, not much more than the Denon. Now, if you don't need a ton of HDMI, the Yamaha might be one to consider. And moving on to the TV section. TVs can be a tricky thing. because there's lots of TVs to pick from. But we can cover some of the basics that many are probably already aware of. And the whole plasma, LED, LCD versus LCD, there's still a ton of advantages of having a plasma TV. They have a wider viewing angle than LCDs typically, although LED LCDs are becoming much closer in quality, but plasma still has the edge slightly. And they also have plasmas have deeper black images, higher contrast in dark scenes. LCD is, of course, catching up in that. And the LED backlit models with local dimming can be controlled according to program material, allowing for some portions of the screen to be dark and others to be lit, but still not quite as good as the best plasmas out there. And plasmas feature some pretty good motion on the screen, better than LCDs, because they use different tech that doesn't blur during fast motion scenes. They've been bringing out, the LCD manufacturers have been bringing out 120 Hertz and 240 Hertz refresh rates that offer better motion processing than 60 Hertz LCD panels, but still not quite as good as plasma. The increased LCD refresh rate has the side effects of causing film to look more like video. Some people don't like that. Some do. LCDs can give you a brighter image than plasma, which is good in brightly lit rooms. So if you can't dim the lights as well, LCDs have that advantage. And they're usually a little bit thinner than plasmas, and they use less plasma, or yeah, they use less plasma. Well, they probably do. They use less power than plasmas. And so then we have the old issue of 720p versus 1080p. Now there aren't a lot of 720p TVs around anymore, so this is not really as critical, I suppose. But it depends on the distance you're sitting from the TV, whether or not there's an advantage to having a 1080p or a 720p. If you're primarily watching regular DVDs, for instance, 720p would be more of use to you than a more expensive 1080p TV. But if you have a Blu-ray player, of course, or an HDTVs, that stands for home theater PC, where you play all your movies off your hard drive or stream them, then 1080p might make sense, of course. And you get, for instance, at 55 inches, if you're sitting 7.2 feet away, you get the full benefit of 1080p. But if you're sitting further back, say 10.7 feet, you may not really notice that difference between 1080p and 720p. This is typically the case, but most TVs now are 1080p. Now, of course, with TVs, 3D is an option on many of the TVs. You can get active or passive 3D ability. Some TVs come with passive glasses. Those are the ones that are cheap and you can almost throw away if you had to, with the passive ones. Now the active shutter glasses, which is the type that I have on my older DLP, those flicker on and off 60 times a second. They cost a little more money, typically between say $20 and $35 per pair, which have come down a lot since they used to be at least $60 a pair, and now they've come down into the realm of reasonability. And then another option you'll find in TVs, of course, is the option to stream and connect to all your social media, stream from Netflix, Hulu, and so forth, right from the TV, built-in integrated TV, basically, or internet TV. And if that's important to you, then that's a feature you should probably look for. But me personally, I like to have all that separately or in a different box. My TV, I try to aim that as being just for displaying the image, because if something goes wrong with the TV, you can always replace the TV. You don't have to worry about having 20 components that are built in already out of the box. I prefer it to just be basically a TV. And there were some great deals during Black Friday on TVs. and those have come and gone, but there are still really good prices out there. And for this little guide here, I decided just to cover a little bit of a range here. We'll start here with the 32-inch and below TVs, giving you a bang for the buck, but for smaller viewing areas, like in kitchens and other areas. These are great little TVs. Take, for instance, the Toshiba. The first one I've got here is the Toshiba, and I don't have images for these. Apologize, they're just audio only basically here. The Toshiba L4200U, that's a 720p LED HDTV. It's a 19-inch, and it'll set you back $129. That's an LED backlit, has good audio, dynamic backlight for deeper backlighting, for better lighting rather, deeper lighting. It's good on energy, has a USB media port for audio and photos. Let's take a brief moment here and think about this. Now we're saying 32 inches and below. Now it wasn't long ago with the CRT days that 32 inches was considered huge. If you had a 32 inch, you were a top dog back then. But 32-inch widescreen's probably the equivalent of about a 26 or so 4x3 kind of TV in reality. But still, these are pretty good prices when you think about it. And take, for instance, the RCA. The RCA 32LB4 5RQ. Now this TV is a 32-inch TV for about $350. Features full 1080p, 60 Hertz LCD HDTV. Has 3 HDMI connectors, a USB port, and a tuner built in, ATSC and NTSC, and about 5,000 to 1 contrast ratio. Contrast ratios don't always mean a whole lot, so take that as you will. And even though it sounds like a low number compared to say 90,000 to 1, it's still a pretty good TV overall at that price. You'll find that TV, like I said, for I apologize, I think this TV is actually $219. Actually right now it is $219, listed at $329. You can find it at Walmart. Now jumping into the 42-inch category, we can find the Scepter X409BV-FHD. It's a 39-inch LCD, $288, and it is a 38.5-inch viewable image. They're listed as a 40. Built-in TV tuners, 1080p resolution, 90,000 to 1 contrast ratio, 3 HDMI and USB, again for streaming, connecting your media. Now we jump up in the category here. We jump up to that of the well, it's still a 42. We're in the up to 42 category here. The Sony Bravia Kdl 42EX440 is a 42-inch 1080p HDTV. Will set you back about $548. Has LED backlit. Features the action, sports, and video mode with Motion Flow RX 120 tech. Some will say they don't like this technology, but it depends on the content you're viewing. For live sports, it can be good. You can toggle that motion mode on and off. Now we jump up to the 50-inch category, and we end up running into something like the Samsung UN46ES 6003. It's a 46-inch 1080p 128 Hertz slim LED HDTV. This guy will set you back around $700. Features full 1080p, clear motion rate 240, similar to the Sony motion technology, in which you can toggle on and off to give you the realistic motion. Ultra slim design, wide color enhancer plus, and it's the TV without a stand. You have to, excuse me, the TV without stand. It'll size-wise, it lists this as a slim. It's 41.8 41.8 inches by 27.6 inches by 10.9 inches thick. If you throw in a stand, then it becomes 41.8 by 24.8 inch by I can't be right. The stat that the web page had 1.8 inches. I don't think so. Maybe. Yeah. So at any rate, that is the Samsung 46-inch LED TV. Clear motion rate was developed, incidentally, to accurately measure how well an LCD or LED TV can depict fast-moving images. LED TVs with a CMR of 240 can display action-packed movement with sharp detail and deeper levels of contrast while eliminating image distortion. And it features Wide Color Enhancer Plus to give you the entire RGB spectrum. Moving on up into the same category, we have a 48-inch, the TCL LE48 FHD F3300 ZTA. That is a 1080p 240 Hertz LED HDTV with a 2-year warranty. Typically these warranties come 1 or 2 years with most of these TVs, and this one has it has several HDMI ports on it, which it features ultra thin frame with glass stand, big screen without the big size, 240 Hertz refresh rate for reducing the motion blur, 1080p resolution. Does not have 3D ability on this TV either. Has a 178-degree viewing angle on this guy. Now, as far as the HDMI ports go on this unit, this was again the 3300 model, and it featured a total of, just making sure I have this clarified, two HDMI and one USB. Moving on, jumping up into the above 50 category. You're almost ready for your AARP card. The Samsung UN55ES6003 55-inch. It's a 1080p 120 Hertz slim LED HDTV. It is about $1,250 for this 55-inch TV. Features the clear motion rate 240, ultra slim design, wide color enhancer plus, and it has various features such as the Wi-Fi is built in, web browser, slim LED design, Connect Share, and built-in camera too. And moving on to the next guy here, we have the 60-inch $999 TV. This is the Vizio E601i-A3 60-inch 1080p 120 Hz Razer LED Smart TV. Has Vizio Internet apps where you can instantly enjoy online movies, TV shows, music, and so forth. Slim design, ultra-thin profile, 1080p Full HD, built-in Wi-Fi, and a 1-year warranty. Of course, add that Mac warranty here. No 3D ability by default on this guy either. Now we jump into the big category, and that is the 65-inch. And this is where we get into some pretty cool features. This TV is about as much as I paid for mine back in 2007 or 2008 for a 61-inch back then. It is $24.99. It is the Panasonic Viera TC-P65GT50. 65-inch of 1080p goodness at 600 Hertz. It's a full HD 3D capable plasma TV. Features the Infinite Black Pro panel, Vera Connect Wi-Fi built in with web browser, glass and metal design, 3D 24p cinema smoother, DLNA capable, built-in Wi-Fi, and a pretty awesome TV, and you can find it for around $2,500, and you're ready for 3D with this guy. And they incidentally, some of the people recommend pairing it with an SSG-4100 GB Samsung active glasses, the 2012 model. I think they're around $20, and they get the best results with that. And that is it on TVs. So moving on to the other ideas for Christmas, and if you have a smaller pocketbook and you're looking for some smaller items, one item might be the Roku Lt for $49.99. It's a 720p HD streamer. Features Wi-Fi, BGN, 600 channels of movies, sports, and so forth. Composite video, 480i capable, so you can put it on either kind of TV. HDMI 720p and 16:9 ability or 4:3. It also has analog left and right stereo or 5.1 over HDMI. So if you have someone who has an older TV and you think they might be into streaming TV and movies, this Roku would certainly fill the bill. Looking for that tech gadget for kids or maybe for someone else, a friend or whatnot? Check out the Cobra CX110 16-mile two-way walkie-talkies. They can be found at Walmart for around $25 or on Amazon. They feature a 16-mile range, maybe if you're out in the desert. FRS/GMRS comes with the batteries. Actual range, according to most people, is more like 5 to 8 miles, depending on the type of buildings and interference you have. At a camp, like out in the woods, some people have managed to get 8 miles. These could be a great gift idea for kids. Pair them up. It has, I think, around 22 channels that you can set. You may be able to interlink several pairs of them. I'm not positive on that yet. I haven't checked into that, but that's a possibility, and they have 22 channels on there. And the other gift idea you might consider is one that we've talked about on the show before, and one that I have video of, is video from a keychain camera. These are lightweight, barely weigh anything, usually around 40 bucks on eBay from various vendors. Useful for RCs or spy cameras or RC airplanes or RC cars. It's better than what most people would use in the say the GoPro camera, because that's a bigger, bulkier camera. And if you look on our Text2 website, you'll see the aerial video I have taken from this. I only have one video up there, but I've taken many a video from this. Pair it up with a I think it uses the micro SD card slot. You can fit in there, I think, a 16 gig at least, and record, I don't know what it is, around an hour's worth of video maybe. I could be wrong, I forget, it's been a while since I've used it. Go for the number 11 or the number 16 of these. The number 18 may have some issues with frames missing. This is the keychain camera, the number 808, 11 or 16. Those are the best options, and here was one shot taken from my Twin Star electric plane high above the ground. Another idea might be a robot. This little guy here is the Tin Can robot. He will set you back about 15 bucks on Amazon. You can turn a metal can into just about anything these days, including a walking, wobbling, bog-eyed robot that can move. It can be transformed to become a robotic monster too. Cans can be cool. The kit includes parts, instructions, just add a can-do attitude, and you can watch your child's delight or your own delight and build the robot. Great for a science enthusiast or a robot fan. Requires 2 AAA batteries. It's basically recommended for ages 8 and up. And they consider this green science because you can recycle old metal drink cans. The kit includes parts and instructions. You just add the can. And a pretty cool little device for a cheap price. Now, if you're shopping for someone who's into flight or maybe as a simmer, on PC, what would the show be without a mention of some flight-related things, such as this little guy here. This is the Hobby Zone Champ RTF. It's ready to fly. Everything you need for $89.99 in the box. You can get it on Amazon. It can teach you how to fly in one box. The key here is it doesn't have ailerons. It just uses rudder to turn left and right. It's completely assembled, flight ready. Just charge the batteries up and go. You do have to do some trimming of it to get it to fly straight. The has a 2.4 gigahertz transmitter with Spectrum DSM technology, scale wing rib detail, and steerable tail wheel. Features the 1S 3.7 volt 150 milliamp LiPo battery and DC LiPo charger, all included. This plane, if you can check out on YouTube, there's quite a slew of videos out there with this guy. It basically flies itself and lands itself. If you let go of the controls, it'll pretty much glide to the ground. Of course, the drawbacks of it being a smaller plane are that it will take a beating in the wind if you have a lot of wind. So you might not want to fly on the windiest of all days. Even my big 55-inch wingspan Twin Star 2, I think it's 55. It's 50 or something like that. Even that one I sometimes don't want to fly in heavy winds rather. The wingspan on this guy, incidentally, is about 20.3 inches. It weighs, when it flies, 1.3 ounces. Compare that to my Twin Star 2, which weighs about 40 to 60, depending on whether you've got all kinds of video gear on it or not. And I overpower mine with a brushless motor and so forth. But this guy's a pretty good deal. So if you've got a young kid or anyone who's learning to fly, it's a good buy on the Hobby Zone Champ. Now, next up on the simmer realm is FTX's Pacific Northwest PNW add-on for flight sim. You can head on out to fullterrain.com and you can purchase the add-on for about 40 bucks. You can buy some add-on airports for around 30 a piece, such as Darrington. Absolutely stunning detail, as you can see here. I have the add-on, and it's just an awesome experience, transforming what was before your standard Flight Simulator X platform into something that is unreal and up to date. Even here in the year 2012, Flight Sim X was released back in 2006, and they've done a fantastic job on their product. Now the final entry in the Holiday Buyer's Guide, Flight Sim related, would be that of Latitude. Now this is sort of a mini review too for Latitude, I must admit here. Latitude is an add-on for Flight Sim X or for P3D, Prepare 3D, and Latitude, getting to the right spot here, is a $40 add-on. You can find it out on the Rex website. They make some great products such as Rex Essentials. That's another good Christmas buying guide. Rex Essential Plus is out now, and it has the overdrive and everything for around 40 as well. This add-on for Latitude is $40. It adds a whole new dimension to Flight Sim X, for instance, making you strive to be a better virtual pilot because it keeps track of everything you do with the stick. It does not look at procedures. It does not look at whether your strobe lights are on, that sort of thing, but it checks to see how you're flying. Are you coming in too steep? Are you coming in too high? Are you coming in too fast? Are you staying at the same altitude and so forth throughout your cruise phase of your flight? And all of that, and then you land back at the airport or at the other airport you're heading to. It keeps track of it all so that at the end you have a report, and it'll tell you, hey, you did 67% overall on skill and 85% on comfort. Now the comfort being your people on your plane, how comfortable were they during the flight? The skill being how well did you fly? And then couple that with the economics of flying, such as planning, which is all part of Latitude. You can and should plan your flights beforehand so you can figure out how much fuel you're going to need, how much weight is in the plane, and so forth. All that planning comes into play, and you can earn money and advance on the leaderboards and your career if you upload your stats in the Latitude portal. Technically, you don't have to buy Latitude to take a look at the portal. You can go to their portal site, and if you go to rexlatitude.com/world, you can log in with an ID and see some of these leaderboards out there, such as this one right here. You can also take a look at the radar of who is currently flying, and there's a chat window there, at least in the actual program. I can't remember if there's one in the standard portal out there or not, the one before you buy it. And so once you've launched Latitude, you're presented with this window, and this area on the left is your quick launch. Our full video on how to use Latitude is up there on TechStew, so if you want to take a look at it. We're not going to get into too much detail here, other than you have the option of just launching Latitude and then flying. But if you click on the Operations tab and you have Flight Sim running, it uses SimConnect, connects to Flight Sim. You can load up how many people you have on the plane, how much fuel you're going to need, and establish the flight plan. It'll give you some estimates once you put in the to and where you're coming from and where you're going to. You can also use your own planning software, like FlightAware or something like that, to plan the flight. I believe the FlightAware is around $2 a month too for the subscription plan. Then when you're done with your flight, provided you've landed in one piece, or even if you haven't, I guess it still will keep track of parts of your flight. Which, by the way, means that if you have your plane lined up to land, you could save the flight right there and just keep practicing your landings until you get it right. Or do your takeoffs. And same thing. And once you touch down, it will give you your stats, like here. And there's a button up at the top where you can say, hey, I don't want that, the little crossed out circle. I don't want that to be uploaded. Or you can click the upload button to upload those stats, and you can view the details, hover over them as to what you did wrong. In this case, this is a very bad flight, and all the details are there. And when it's connected to Flight Sim, you have the details flowing at the bottom as far as your altitude and so forth. You can run Latitude on a remote PC, and you can then view it on the remote PC if you have your full screen going on your main PC, your Flight Sim PC. It has some nice charts there too, as far as how the flight went, the altitude, the climb, and so forth. And just a few sub notes here to Latitude. They give you about a 250-foot range of up and down once you're at your cruise level. So if you're drifting around up and down, you got about 250 feet either direction. Now in reality, if you're doing a pilot's license test or whatnot, the FAA can get you if you go above 100 feet in range. The stabilized portion of approach for Latitude is considered to be the last 30 to 60 seconds before you land. Approach is based on a standard 3 degrees for altitude rather. It can be steeper, but it shouldn't be shallower. Shallow approaches are penalized because that's a bad idea. If you have an engine failure, you want altitude as your friend. Typically, general aviation pilots will do the steeper approach than the 3-degree rule even. They'll also penalize you if you slow down during the descent. Not to say that it's not common to slow down during descent to save fuel and so forth, but Latitude, the purpose of this with Latitude is to do some planning ahead of time or use an FMS and follow it. Typically you should be at your expected descent area at about 3 miles before the airport as a rule of thumb. And if you can't slow your plane down, then you're likely descending too fast or didn't plan far enough in advance. Typical landing mentality is to be about 500 feet above pattern over the airport, and at that point to do your slow down for maneuvering and do the 45-degree entry. So that is Latitude, and you can upload your stats, start your career online, and make a go of it as a flying pilot. Now I will mention the pick of the week is the hardware pick of the week. We're not going to do any real news stories this week since we had a huge holiday guide section there. This one is more of a business line pick of the week, and it is that of it's the Precision, the Dell T3600. It supports anywhere from 4 to 8 core Xeons, and we tested one out that was a Xeon E5-1650, and it's a 6-core chip. Features, typically these have Quadro video cards when you purchase them from Dell. Now in our case, we usually take out the video card and put in, say, an ATI 7750 in this case, and this whole review will come up online here in the next few days, hopefully. Hard drive wise, it supports SAS SATA 3 SSD. It has a PCI Express x8 card, PERC H310, supporting 2 drives technically off of that. Has onboard SATA ports, but only 2 of them are activated with the BIOS. Future BIOS upgrade may change that. And the CD you'll find attached to one, the other one is free. You could technically fit 3 hard drives inside of this case. I'll show you the image here. I thought I had the internals here. Does not look like I have the internals, but in the inside of the case, there's room for 2 drives by default. There are the little trays that Dell likes to put in there. And on the outside, you have the 5 1/4 inch, only 1 bay in this case, and you have the slimline DVD. So you could put hard drive in the 5 1/4, but you lose the SD, the memory card reader. That is the downside. Overall, it's a pretty fantastic case. No screws, you just pull the handle and the side comes off. In the back, you can see the HDMI and the network port. That was a blurry picture, I didn't realize that. Here's a wider view. And in the front, there are the HDMIs, 4 of them right in the front. In the back, we have a total of 6. No eSATA, so plan ahead. So the front has 3 USB 2.0s, only 1 USB 3.0 in the front. And in the back, you have the 5 USB 2.0s and 1 USB 3.0. You have a PS2, 2 of them, serial port, which is rare these days, an RJ45 for your gigabit LAN, and the 1394 FireWire if you've added that feature in. And like I said, we got the 3.2 gigahertz 6-core Xeon, and it is fast, really fast. So fast that we did a pass mark on it, and the pass mark rating, as you can see, was in the 4,000 plus range. Compare that to, say, a quad-core standard Q6600 type machine, which is in the 1300 range or something like that. This was about as fast as my home machine. My home machine still beats it a little bit, but I have my home machine overclocked. My home machine is an i7 2600K. I have that guy overclocked from 3.6 gigahertz to 4.8 gigahertz, so I'm sort of cheating the system. But the advantage here with the Xeon, the 6-core, is you got 6 cores, and you're not overclocking. So right out of the box, you're already smoking fast. It has 2 PCI Express x16 slots, generation 3, 1 PCI Express 16 slot, generation 3, which is only wired at x4. You've got your 1 PCI Express x4 generation 2 slot, 1 PCI Express x1 generation 2, and 1 regular PCI slot. Now they had the RAID card put into the PCI x16 slot. I moved it to one of the x4 slots to free up that secondary video port. And I dumbed down the RAM when I purchased it. Only got with like 2 gig of RAM or a gig of RAM, something along those lines. To get it to 16 or even 32 gig of RAM, they wanted an excruciating amount of money. It was about 3 times the cost of, say, buying the RAM from Newegg, for instance. And it ended up with a purchase of around, I think, $1,700 or something like that for the system as featured. So that's the T3600 from Dell. And it's a pretty good hardware pick of the week. The cons are it's limited on the amount of bays you have in the front compared to some past models of their Precisions. But the case is slim, modern looking, inside very well designed, and everything is easily accessible, removable. You can get at everything you need to get at, and performance is top notch. Can't complain. Get that 3-year warranty by default, so they come next day to your business and replace it. The Dell T3600 Precision. So that's gonna pretty much wrap up the show for today. This was the Christmas special edition, short of having Santa Claus here. That's gonna do the show for today. It's gonna wrap up the show, and remember to keep on cooking with tech, and we will see you next time on TechStew.